Dan Ratcliffe goes on, former Director of National Intelligence, goes on Maria Bartiromo's show. And the things that he says becomes a sensation. You basically have the Director of National Intelligence, who had access to the files, to say, there's a lot of information there. There's a ton of information there. And not just a ton of information there. There are things that are doing things that we don't know how they're doing it, and we can't replicate the capabilities of those items. You've had Luis Elizondo coming out basically saying, yes, it's not just videos, and it's not just the eye-popping videos that Congress is seeing. Congress is not seeing the blurry footage. They're seeing things that are up close. That's the reason why Congress was so animated. That's the reason why Congress wanted an explanation of what was taking place. The moment that the Pentagon releases videos showing the reality of the UFO issue, the moment that the pilots, who we trust with all of these weapons platforms, comes out and says, and talks and says, yes, I was in that airplane. And while I was in that airplane, I saw a craft, I saw something, and that craft was doing things that my craft couldn't do. Couldn't replicate the functionality, could not compete at all. That's what I saw. That was the reality of it. And the moment they're having conversations with the various people, how do you reconcile that? Like, if you're in Congress, how do you reconcile that potential reality of all of these things being seen by your servicemen, by members of the military, by a new system that apparently can appropriate that information, and by people who were in the Black Budget Project coming out saying, hey, I was in a Black Budget Project, and then doing interviews saying stuff like, we're not alone. It's not us. You can't ignore that. How do you ignore that? I mean, if you're one of these neocons and they tell you that, look, something is flying around our weapons platforms and we don't know what it is, what are they going to say? What do you think those neocons, how do you think they're going to react to something like that? Well, they're going to react like, what the hell is it? We need to figure it out. And the moment that you tell them, look, they're doing things that require a different look in our physics. What? And so they start doing experimentation into all of the stuff that looked like Star Trek technologies. This is, again, the stuff that came out after the Black Budget Project was exposed. And the stuff that they were doing and studying was phenomenal. They were studying stuff like ghosts, poltergeist activity, because they were trying to figure out if that stuff had some kind of link to UFO activity in the way that UFOs engage, especially from the standpoint of the human faculty, meaning this kind of consciousness aspect that is associated with the UFO phenomena. Let me show you a clip for a moment. These are, I showed this once before, USS Nimitz, David Fravor, that was the one that was on the plane for the Nimitz, Lieutenant Ryan Graves, the one that was on the USS Roosevelt, and Luis Elizondo, the one that was head of the program. Don't take my word for it. I'm making the point that these things have been very prevalent recently. One of the stories that I did earlier, I'm going to show this, but one of the stories that I did earlier in the previous video, it cut off a little bit early, but basically, the USS Kidd, military ship, Navy destroyer, that and other Navy destroyers, 100 miles off the coast of California, in low visibility weather, are chased, pursued, and engulfed in a swarm of 6 of what the person described as looked like Tic Tac. He said it was close enough where he could just look and see it. These things were doing all of these weird maneuvers, up, down, left, right, all over the place, all around the ship. So keep in mind, these are heavy weapons platforms. These things go to places and blow shit up. That's what they do. That's their job. And yet, when they saw it, they called, what is it called? The Scoop. Yeah, the Snoopy team. Now, the Snoop team, is that the team that comes out and says, we're going to identify things of interest that are important, have certain value, or that we don't necessarily know what they are. That team comes out on all of the ships. The phenomena follows them for 3 hours. 2 days, hundreds of miles. And at times, like literally just standing over the helicopter pad at one point. Or they could look up. That's it. It followed them at the exact pace to which they were going. And at some point just flew away. But keep in mind, if that was a drone, think of the capabilities of that drone. And if people want to say, well, wait, that was just, how do you know that wasn't just a high-tech drone or some kind of high-tech device? Well, I would say this. It was what, 5 or 6 of them. It was low visibility. It was able to chase down, find, where you could only really see a mile in advance, and coordinate its activities with the other drones as they were flying around, hovering, swarming, and basically whatever they were doing over the craft. If it's us, or if it's not us, and we say it's not us, who is it? And if you want to make the argument, well, maybe it's some kind of other civilization or some other thing on the planet, like the Chinese or the Russians. But think about what that means. That would mean that on 2 days back to back, you had a situation where somebody else's technology was able to penetrate U.S. security twice. That's a hell of a blunder. And not just penetrate it twice, when the people were exposed to the technology, the people who literally observe, and that's their job to observe and identify, spent 3 hours and couldn't do it. I would imagine there's all sorts of video, there's all sorts of footage and everything else. We will probably not see it, but that story will be in Congress. When they started investigating that, and you could see it move higher and higher up, the FBI was called in. Even the highest person apparently that was on the chain of command ends up being involved in that conversation. They were using the Freedom of Information Act to get information. And you could see how there is this kind of slight panic in the way that they're dealing with it as the stories are coming in back to back to back to back. It is utterly fascinating. And so that's just one story. There are plenty of those. And each of these pilots have a story of their own. And that's kind of the point, right? That's why the Navy has changed their protocols. Because the fact of the matter is, if something like this is invading your military space, how do you ignore that? Meaning the moment that this information hit the newspapers, and the moment that the pilots are saying, yeah, there's stuff in our view, and the moment they start saying, hey, this almost hit an airplane, and hey, this military commander saw it, and hey, it was in this military base, it was around these nuclear weapons. How does Congress ignore it? They can't. They've tried for all of these years. But the fact is, the moment that the stuff was thrown into the public, it was kind of difficult to pull back. Not to mention the public was okay with it. That's the wow part. The public saw the videos and were like, oh, wow, that's interesting. The public, I don't think, though, has appropriated or internalized what it means. If this report comes back and says, yes, this is not us. We can't build it. We don't believe anybody else around the world could build it. It's not us. And we think it's technology. We're not alone. What happens if the United States comes out and says that based on the research to which they found? I want to show you Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio is now also speaking to cameras. I keep saying we're in a new world. Think of what this was like several years ago. You would never have these guys speaking on camera saying, yes, we need to figure out what's going on. Yes, we need to explore the reality of this. Yet, that would have never happened. That would have never happened. But right now, oh yeah, we're going to talk UFOs for a bit. And I'm going to show you Marco Rubio's response when she's asked this very particular question by Maria Bartiromo. Welcome to the Soapbox. I'm going to have to add sound to that because that sounds weird when it doesn't have sound associated with it. But yeah, my name is Jamarl Thomas. This is Progressive Soapbox. That's my heading when I'm doing UFOs. I have another one on the UFO front. But yeah, this was a long day. This was a miserable day. This has been a miserable week. Next week is not going to be any better. So yeah, let's talk UFOs. That makes me smile. Take a look at these guys talking about Congress getting information and talking about how basically the Navy has basically changed their protocols, but they're not going to tell you the information that they're getting, despite the fact that they're getting definitely information.
But there are people inside the United States government that are taking this serious, and I've been down to D.C. twice to talk to folks, behind closed doors, to go because they want to hear the story, and I've got a lot of you got to be joking. I mean, this seriously happened, and I'm like, yeah, it did happen, and it is real. What are you doing about it?
So what kind of people are you talking to?
High-level government officials is what I'll say.
I hope that I'm helping them, helping give them a voice. And when I went to D.C. and met with 2 of the 3 branches of our government, my perception was that they took it pretty seriously, and they were asking some hard questions to the superiors in the Navy that were sitting across from me. And I think that is why we see that reporting system that was put in place by the Navy today.
Yeah, what is the reporting system now that exists?
I don't know. It's classified. The reporting system is classified, but I do know it exists. And I do know from other encounters, or whatever we want to call them, that have happened recently from some of my friends, that it seems to be working at the very least.
What makes this material so special? Now, in some cases, this material was told is special. Through analysis, guess what? Not so special. But some of it is absolutely special. I won't point out which ones on that slide, but there are some that are absolutely special and have been briefed to some very, very senior levels of this government. And they do remarkable and extraordinary things, and they're built in such a way that to this day we still can't replicate it.
What do you mean built, Lou? What do you mean built? Because if you tell me built, that implies conscious intent, will, manufacturing capabilities. If that means all of those things. And what are the extraordinary attributes that are associated with it? Now keep in mind, the U.S. Army is apparently working with To the Stars Academy, which is basically a UFO centric thing. This is what I'm telling you, the world has changed. These organizations would not be doing this if it wasn't something there. And they basically are talking about materials. So when Elizondo is saying this, there's a certain context for this. Considering that they got something. But he's saying built, he's saying manufacturing, he's saying we can't replicate the manufacturing to this day, meaning somebody built something that is superior to something, that we could do. That is phenomenal that he is out here saying that. And if he is saying that, how does Congress come away and say anything other than, yes, there's stuff that's not ours? If Luis Elizondo is admitting this, then the ballgame's over. The charade is over. The band has stopped playing. Honest to God, how do you take that? The man that was studying UFOs for the U.S. government is basically giving a press conference where he's showing slides that said there's technology on this slide that we can't replicate that was built by something else. Walk out the door. The wild part is that should have been mainstream news, because what he just said there is mind-blowing. That goes beyond are we alone? That goes into not only are we not alone, we know that there's a mind behind what is taking place. This is not some kind of, interdimensional sprite. We have access to technology. We have access to photos, cameras, all of that stuff. This is a thing. This is something that's real, tangible. And our physical matter reality, yes, we have something. But they don't do that. They don't do that. Now, when Dan Radcliffe went on Maria Bartiromo, they did then, and they hit her wall to wall. Like, she got a huge amount of buzz off of that clip, which is exactly why when Marco Rubio stopped on her show, she asked him this.
Lots of reports about what we call unidentified aerial phenomenon. There are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technologies that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realized.
So, Senator, what about that? What can you tell us about UFOs?
Well, we have things flying over military installations, over military exercises, and other places, and we don't know what it is. It isn't ours. It isn't anything that's registered with the FAA, and in many cases exhibits attributes of things we've never seen, technology, the kinds of technology we haven't seen before, or at least that's what it seems like. I think you have to know what it is, or we have to try to know what it is. That's my view of it. Without any preconceived notions, maybe there's a...
You just gave a preconceived notion, buddy. I just wanted to interrupt with that. Technology like we've never seen before. Technology is not something that just magically happens in nature. Technology, well, depends on what you mean by the human physicality, right? But you know what I mean. If he's saying that this is technology because he's seen so many videos, classified, up close, non-blurry, that he's come to a conclusion that these are technology, then the ball game's over. The ball game's over, right? These guys are saying some mind-blowing shit. And I'm saying the people in the know, DNI Ratcliffe, Director of National Intelligence, yes, I have the files. There's a lot of shit in those files. And yeah, there are a lot of UFOs, technology. We don't know what they are. They're doing things that we can't do. Marco Rubio, yeah, there's technology. We shouldn't have any preconceived notions. Well, how many clips have you seen, Marco? And in the context of how many clips have you seen, have you come to some conclusion, assumption, hypothesis on whether or not it's some kind of man-made or some kind of being-made phenomena, or if it's some kind of natural phenomena? Meaning, does it look like something of nature, or does it look like something of something else creating it? And it seems like, in their assessment, it's something else that is created, some kind of craft that is doing things that we can't replicate. And keep in mind, Bigelow has already made the point that we do have craft. Whether these guys know it or not is secondary to the point that he's saying, yeah, we do have craft. If Bigelow knows that, because it's bubbled up enough for him to know that, they probably do too. They've been getting briefings for at this point, like 2 years, especially after the report from the New York Times came out. And shockingly, they are interested. The moment that there was any legitimacy to it, they got interested. Phenomenal.
There's a logical explanation. Maybe it's something that can be explained away. Maybe it's a foreign adversary who's made a technological leap, as you heard the former DNI said. Whatever it is, we need to know the answer to it. The problem with this issue is every time you raise it, people get all nervous. Oh, does this mean UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrial? We don't have to go that far. It's very simple. There are things flying over national security installations. We don't know who they are. We don't know what it is. It isn't ours. We need to find out.
Well, this is
Rubio. The very next question has to be, Rubio, what you're saying presents somewhat of a problem for me. The United States is spending $1 trillion on military a year, give or take. We have all of these, Five Eyes and everything else. We have all of this technology that we're putting all around the world for these military conquests. And yet, our military installations are being breached by a potential foreign adversary around the planet. Which foreign adversary do you believe it is? Do you believe it's China, and do you believe it's Russia? And how do you believe they've leapfrogged us in the level of technology like this? Please answer. I want to know that. That's a big deal. If you're telling me that after spending all of this money on military, that our systems can be breached by a foreign adversary, that's a big fucking deal. Now, if you're saying that I don't think it's us, and maybe that's the next question too. Do you think it's us? What do you think? He wants to be very careful about making that assessment, but he's already said it was technology. That's a Freudian slip, but he believes that. And he's already made the point that says, I hope it's not us. He's trying to take a front of no preconceived notions, no preconceived notions. I don't want to necessarily push the public in one direction or another without necessarily the backing of this particular device to say, this is true or that's true. But you telling yourself, Marco, DNI Ratcliffe was more honest. Yeah, we have loads of evidence. You're trying to play the role of a politician. And in doing so, you're still leaking the information. All right. Do you think it's of this world or not? Meaning, when you look at it, does it look like something that we would build, human beings, in regards to the context of what we build. Our ships, our craft and whatnot look the same. Even when the Nazis was building those high-speed fighter jets, they still were jets. You know, they didn't have this kind of warp bubble that went in from point A to point B. It wasn't like that. It didn't have this kind of design where animal tissue was mixed into the technology, and that wasn't that. It was a very straightforward design that pretty much all of us had. Did it look like something we built? Like, those are just basic questions that you can ask based on his viewing of what he saw. And the classified documents that you saw, can you give us some evidence or some information about some of the things that you've seen, some flight characteristics? Do you know where they're coming from? With all of the ships that have been paying attention to this, have you guys been able to locate a particular area where they seem to have a huge activity? Do you think that there is a base underwater or somewhere nearby if it's not us of this planet? Otherwise, those ships are small. How would they get here? How are they getting here? Oh God, there's so many questions. There's so many questions. Yeah, there's so many questions, and none of them are going to get asked today.
This is absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, from my standpoint, when I heard John Ratcliffe talk about that, I went and I looked up what you've said about the Pentagon report coming up June 1st. What do you think we're going to learn from that Pentagon report on June 1st?
Well, first, I'm not sure they're going to come in on time, to be honest with you, because they miss a lot of deadlines in government on these sorts of things. But we'll get a report at some point. Second is, I don't know if we're going to know what. I mean, I'm not sure that by June 1st they'll have reached a hard conclusion about what they're dealing with, and there may be more questions or new questions than full answers after the fact. I can tell you it's being taken more seriously now than it ever has been. And look, there's a stigma associated with this, all right? When a Navy pilot would report that they saw something, they were told, you need to go see the flight surgeon, you know, to check out your head, you know, make sure you're not seeing things. So there's a stigma associated with reporting it, even talking to you about it now, right? I mean, people are going to go out and say, look what these people are focused on when the world is falling apart. So there's a stigma associated with it, and that's, I think, needs to go away. We don't have...
Very next question. How long has that stigma existed? Meaning, how long, how far back have Navy pilots been sent to the, flight person? 40s, 50s, 60s? How long has the U.S. government been studying this? That's the other question. Now, we know Project Blue Book was in effect. Well, Project Blue Book was made explicitly to make it look like this wasn't a real thing. And that's the fear with this particular document and the way that they go about doing that document. Hynek, the one that was running that for the government, comes out, realizes that the government was doing a snuff job, and starts doing the investigation himself legitimately. Because he believed it at that point. He saw enough evidence to give him the conclusion that there's something there. The catch is, how much does the government know? What is the government working on? And for that standpoint, what does Marco Rubio know? Does Marco Rubio believe that there are other projects outside of his knowledge and some kind of sap? What does he know? This stuff is in the black. That's the terrifying aspect for us. We only know what they tell us. And do you believe that Adam Schiff, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz are honest arbiters in typical affairs? And do you really want to trust them to give you the information about something that is beyond this world, that is something of an intelligence, that can honestly be skewed in a way that works in self-interest? I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. We are living in very interesting, terrifying, and potentially emancipatory times. I think so.